The railroad builders of the post-Civil War decade created a transportation system that was required for the industrialization of the nation's economy and is indispensable to this day. Few would deny that federal, state, and local governmental subsidies were justified as initial spurs to the construction of roads where population was not yet sufficient to assure immediate revenues. State and local cash subsidies amounted to more than $500 million, and federal and state land grants equaled the size of Texas. Federal cash loans were smaller and federal land grants were larger than those of the states. It is estimated that taxpayers bore 40% of the cost of all railroad building prior to 1870. The unconscionable methods of the promoters quickly turned the public against subsidies. Innumerable devices were invented to loot the companies and cheat the public. A standard technique was disclosed when credit mobilier was investigated in 1872 and 1873. The largest stockholders of the Union Pacific, led by Oak Ames, congressman from Massachusetts, had formed the Credit Mobilier as a construction company. As directors of the Union Pacific, they awarded a contract to Credit Mobilier that drained the railroad company of both its huge federal subsidy and the funds of private investors. As owners of Credit Mobilier, they pocketed enormous profits and disbanded the construction company. As directors of the Union Pacific, they ran it into debt and bankruptcy so that the company was burdened with a capitalization which could only be serviced by permanently exorbitant freight and passenger rates. They distributed shares in Credit Mobilier at low prices where they would do the most good. The recipients included senators, representatives, and Vice President Schuyler Colfax. Perhaps the worst revelation, indicative of the state of public morals, was that many of these purchasers of shares refused to admit that they had engaged in anything but a normal business transaction. Practically all of the railroad companies were looted in one fashion or another by insiders and left to carry the watered debts by charging high rates. Land grants, instead of being used to finance construction, were held until the settlement of continuous government lands caused a rise in price, and were then unloaded on later settlers for fat profits. Directors of the companies used their power to create artificial rises in the price of their company's securities by withholding issues from the market and then dumping their personal holdings on small investors. Bankruptcies and receiverships alike were rigged, sometimes by the same group, to profit insiders and exploit the public. In 1782, the Supreme Court ruled that local governments were liable for debts contracted to subsidize railroads, meaning that the taxpayers were denied a recourse of default. And this, along with the Credit Mobilier revelations, ended the era of government subsidies. The Panic of 1873 pushed many unscrupulous promoters out of the business, but they returned unchastened and fertile with new schemes in the 1880s. By that time, federal and state governments were under pressure from homesteaders, reformers, and users of the roads to regulate the companies. The directors of these were on the defensive, and the corruption of legislators was chiefly designed to prevent regulations of the company's financial and rate policies.